Wedding night horror. The evening air was heavy with anticipation. Lanterns flickered against the polished wood of the plantation estate, casting elongated shadows across the faces of the guests. Laughter echoed faintly, delicate and brittle, as if the joy itself were afraid to linger. Among them a young man stood poised, his suit perfectly pressed, his hands trembling ever so slightly. At 22, he had expected this day for months, rehearsed in his mind the exact words he would whisper to the woman he believed he loved. She approached him slowly, a vision in white lace and soft tulle. Her eyes were bright, her lips curved in what seemed to be a calm, confident smile, but a subtle tension flickered in the corners of her mouth. The bouquet she carried swayed gently, as though carrying its own secret. He reached out to take her hand. "Are you ready?" he whispered, his voice betraying the smallest hint of nervousness. She nodded, and for a moment the world seemed suspended. Suspended in time, suspended in expectation, suspended in innocence. As they walked together toward the dimly lit parlor, the air thickened with unease. No one spoke. The usual wedding chatter had been replaced with a quiet, almost reverent hush. Even the servants, moving silently along the edges of the room, seemed to sense that something extraordinary, something forbidden, was about to unfold. They arrived at the threshold of the bridal suite, a room filled with antique furnishings and heavy drapes, filtering the evening light into a soft golden haze. The young man's heart pounded. He could not have known that, with a single glance across the room, the delicate balance of his world would shatter. Her eyes met his, but in that instant, a shadow flickered over her expression. Not sorrow, not fear, but recognition. Recognition that he would never forget. "Everything will be perfect," he said, trying to steady his voice. "Perfect," she repeated softly, but the word felt hollow, almost rehearsed, a whisper of an unspeakable truth waiting to be unveiled. Clues in the shadows. The first hint came subtly. A locket glinted against the folds of her gown. He noticed the delicate engraving, a symbol he had seen before, hidden in the pages of old family letters he had stumbled upon months prior. A chill ran down his spine, but he dismissed it. Surely, he thought, it was coincidence. The room seemed smaller now, the heavy drapes pressing against the walls like silent witnesses. Dust floated in the shafts of light, particles suspended as if the air itself were holding its breath. "Do you remember your family's summer retreat?" she asked casually. Yet the tone carried a weight that made his chest tighten. "Yes." "Why?" he answered, though unease gnawed at the edges of his confidence. A faint smile curved her lips, quick and fleeting, like a shadow passing across a window. "Just memories," she said, turning away to adjust the lace on her wrist. "Just memories," she said, turning away to adjust the lace on her wrist. And then hit him, an impossible realization that had been buried beneath layers of assumption, familiarity, and blind affection. He recalled the stories whispered in the corners of the estate, the hints from servants and relatives, fragments of conversations that had seemed meaningless at the time. Piece by piece, the truth assembled itself in his mind like a grim puzzle, a lineage hidden, a name repeated, an unexpected reflection of his own existence. Rising tension, he backed away slightly, uncertain, his pulse racing. The room was silent, save for the faint tick of a distant clock. It sounded loud, almost accusatory, each tick hammering into his consciousness. "Something wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but probing. He could not speak. Words failed him, as the gravity of realization pressed down with unbearable weight. His hands shook. The bouquet fell from her grasp to the floor, with a muted thud. She stepped closer, sensing the shift, but not understanding its cause. Her expression flickered from concern to confusion. "You're trembling," she said, reaching out. He shook his head slowly, the truth clawing its way to the surface. "No, he swallowed hard. I can't." The words stuck in his throat. It was then, in that suspended, charged moment, that the unthinkable struck fully into his consciousness. The woman he had pledged his heart to, the one he had thought was his future, shared the same bloodline, the same hidden ancestry. His bride was his half-sister. The reveal, the silence that followed, was absolute. Time seemed to halt. The walls, the drapes, the fading evening light, they all bore witness to the collision of expectation and reality. Her face changed subtly at the same instant. Recognition, horror, confusion. The realization was mutual, a mirror reflecting the same forbidden truth. "Why?" she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't know," he stammered. But even as he spoke, he realized the words were meaningless. They could not undo the revelation, could not erase the knowledge that now bound them in something unnatural, inescapable. The shadows deepened in the corners of the room, elongating, consuming, as if the estate itself were mourning the violation of its quiet order. Aftermath and reflection, hours passed, words were scarce. The couple, once filled with expectation and joy, now moved through the room as if through fog. The estate, with its polished floors and heavy drapes, seemed to shrink, to close in, suffocating with secrets it had long contained. He thought of the family history, of whispered stories, of forbidden relationships, of wealth and power maintained at any cost. He thought of the plantation, its cotton fields stretching endlessly under the sun. The labor, the chains, the rebellion, the bloodline that had grown twisted and secretive over generations. And yet in that moment of horror, a strange clarity emerged. Reality, though unbearable, was undeniable. The truth was complete, irreversible, and final. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of summer blooms and the faint echo of laughter long past. Inside, two souls wrestled with love and loathing, with connection and taboo, with the impossibility of their circumstance. The night stretched endlessly, the silence punctuated only by shallow breaths and the distant clock, counting time in a world where nothing could return to its former state. Closing hook for audience retention. What would you do if the love of your life held a secret too devastating to imagine? How far can family loyalty and hidden histories reach before shattering everything you hold dear? Tonight, the walls of the plantation have witnessed another story. One of shock, revelation, and the dark inheritance of bloodlines long buried. And as the first rays of dawn filter through the drapes, the question remains, can love survive a truth this forbidden? Hidden lineage shock. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silver light across the sprawling plantation estate. Shadows of the towering oaks stretched long and distorted across the manicured lawns, whispering secrets from centuries past. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and damp earth, the scent drifting through the corridors of the grand house. Inside, the young groom, 22, paced nervously. His suit was immaculate, but his fingers trembled as they brushed over the crisp fabric of his cuffs. Tonight, everything he had anticipated, every dream, every carefully planned detail, was about to collide with a truth too heavy to imagine. She entered the room quietly, the delicate lace of her gown catching the moonlight, streaming through the window. Her hair, perfectly arranged, shimmered faintly, and the bouquet she carried looked almost ceremonial, its petals white and pure, yet somehow heavy with foreboding. She smiled softly at him, but beneath that practiced calm, he noticed a flicker of something unusual, a hesitation, a weight behind her eyes that did not belong. "Are you ready?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes," she replied, her tone light, but the slight quiver betrayed an undercurrent of unease. He took her hand, feeling a warmth that did nothing to ease the cold dread creeping up his spine. They stepped into the dimly lit bridal suite, a room adorned with antique furniture, heavy drapes, and walls lined with family portraits spanning generations. Dust floated lazily in the beams of light from the fireplace, particles suspended as if the air itself were holding its breath. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind countless times, imagined every word, every gesture, but nothing had prepared him for the subtle signs, the small but telling hints that were beginning to emerge, subtle clues and growing unease. On the dresser sat a locket, delicate and old, glinting faintly in the firelight. He bent to pick it up, and as his fingers touched the smooth metal, recognition hit him like a thunderclap. He had seen this exact locket months ago in a box of faded letters, tucked in the attic. The engraving, an intricate intertwining of initials, matched the one on a photograph he had dismissed as irrelevant. Her eyes followed his movements, a shadow of awareness crossing her face. "Do you remember your grandmother's diary?" she asked softly, her voice almost hesitant, almost testing. "Yes," he said cautiously. The realization had begun to bloom in his mind like a dark flower, its roots twisting through every memory and story he had ever known. Pieces began to fit together. Names, events, hidden correspondences, glimpses of people long gone, all pointing toward an impossible truth. He looked at her more closely now, noticing features that suddenly mirrored his own. The realization grew heavier with each passing second, each glance, each heartbeat, and then it became undeniable. She was connected to him in ways forbidden, hidden, and devastating. She was his half-sister. The room seemed to close in, the heavy curtains pressing against the walls, as if to contain the secret. Every sound, the distant ticking of the clock, the rustle of the trees outside, even the soft crackle of the fireplace, was magnified. each echo marking the tension stretching taut between them. Slow burn suspense. He attempted to steady his breathing, forcing his thoughts to focus. Memories and hints that had once seemed inconsequential suddenly formed a dark pattern. Whispered stories of hidden relationships, old family secrets, never spoken aloud, letters passed in secrecy. All of it pointed here, to this night, to this revelation. Her expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable, as if she too sensed the unraveling of the illusion. "You look distracted," she said softly, stepping closer. It's just." His voice faltered, but he could not speak the truth aloud. Words failed him. The horror was too profound. I think we need to talk about our families," he finally managed, the weight of his words settling heavily in the room. Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "The stories, the letters, the locket. It all points to something I didn't want to believe, something I never imagined," he whispered. His hand shook visibly, and he could feel the gravity of centuries pressing down upon him through the walls of the estate. Hints of ancestral secrets, the portraits lining the walls, seemed almost alive, eyes following him, faces frozen in painted eternity. Each image was a reminder of the generations that had come before, lives intertwined with secrets and forbidden knowledge. He thought of the plantation fields outside, the endless cotton rows, the laborers, the chains, the rebellion, the hidden histories buried beneath the surface. Everything led to this moment, where history itself pressed its weight upon two young lives. She reached for him instinctively, her fingers brushing against his arm. He flinched but did not withdraw completely, sensing her confusion and fear mirrored in his own reflection. The locket, the photograph, the faint recollections of whispered family tales, they all converged into one shocking, undeniable conclusion. "You're not understanding," he said finally, his voice tight. "We are families. There's something you need to know. Something impossible." "What is it?" she asked, her own voice trembling now, betraying a vulnerability she had carefully hidden all evening. He took a deep breath, feeling the oppressive weight of history and blood pressing down on him. You're my half-sister." The moment of horror, the silence that followed, was absolute. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the room, but no sound came from either of them. She stared at him, wide-eyed, comprehension dawning slowly. Recognition, horror, disbelief. The emotion was raw, visceral, impossible to ignore. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't either," he admitted, though even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were futile. Nothing could undo what had been revealed. The centuries of hidden family secrets had finally surfaced, collapsing the illusion of normalcy and love into fragments too heavy to bear. The room felt smaller now, oppressive. And its quiet, the antique furniture looming like silent witnesses. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, exaggerating the drama of the moment. Dust motes drifted lazily, highlighting the stillness and the tension that had become almost unbearable. Emotional turmoil and reflection. Hours passed like minutes. Words were scarce. Glances were loaded with unspoken questions and disbelief. Each heartbeat seemed to echo in the room, marking time in a world where nothing could return to its previous state. He thought of the plantation, of its sprawling fields, of the generations of laborers and heirs, of the intricate web of secrets and lies that had led to this moment. Every story, every whisper, every hidden truth had built toward this revelation, binding them in an intricate, inescapable pattern. Outside, the wind carried the scent of jasmine and the faint sounds of the nocturnal world. Inside, they remained bound by knowledge, stunned into silence, grappling with the impossible. Love, once pure and full of hope, had become complicated and forbidden. Can we?" she began, but the words faltered, and she trailed off. "I don't know," he admitted. "I can't imagine how, what we do now." The reality was crushing. They could not erase it, could not undo the revelation, could not pretend ignorance, but they could endure, could face it, could navigate the fragile and impossible path that stretched before them. Cinematic climax and payoff dawn approached slowly, pale light filtering through the drapes and illuminating the faces of the young couple. Their expressions were etched with shock, grief, and disbelief, shadows dancing across their features. The estate remained silent, indifferent to human suffering, yet heavy with history and the burden of secrets long concealed. He looked at her, searching her eyes for understanding, for forgiveness, for any hint of the woman he thought he knew. She met his gaze, equally uncertain, equally haunted, yet not entirely devoid of connection. The bond they had shared remained complicated, strained, and irrevocably altered. Outside, the plantation stretched endlessly, its fields bathed in soft morning light. The world moved on, unaware of the revelation that had shattered two lives inside its walls. Inside, time seemed suspended, moments drawn out, each second heavy with emotion and cinematic weight. The room was silent. Save for the faint rustle of silk against polished wood, the plantation estate loomed outside the tall windows, its sprawling fields bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun. He stood at 22, young, full of hope, and yet a deep unease gnawed at his chest. Tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of his life, marrying the woman he loved, the one he had imagined spending the rest of his life with. But beneath the calm, beneath the carefully orchestrated perfection, a storm of forbidden truths was brewing. She entered, a vision in white lace, carrying her bouquet with effortless grace. Her hair fell in soft waves, catching the fading light, and her eyes shone with what seemed to be joy. Yet he noticed the slightest hesitation, a subtle tension at the corners of her mouth. His heart skipped a beat, a warning he tried desperately to ignore. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice steady though a tremor betrayed his calm. "Yes," she whispered, her voice soft yet weighted, carrying an unspoken tension he could not identify. As they moved toward the bridal suite, the air thickened, the golden light filtering through the windows highlighting the dust suspended in the beams. Everything had been perfect, the ceremony, the music, the flowers, but now each detail seemed charged with an unseen weight. Small doubts, growing fear. He noticed the locket around her neck, small and delicate, glinting faintly. He bent to examine it, and recognition struck. The engraving was familiar. He had seen it months ago, tucked in a box of old family letters hidden in the attic. Memories of whispered stories, fragments of conversations, and family photographs flashed through his mind. Piece by piece, the impossible truth began to assemble itself. Her eyes followed his movements, catching the shadow that passed across his face. "Do you remember your cousin's journal?" she asked softly, almost hesitantly. "Yes," he replied cautiously. Each word felt heavy, each breath taut with anticipation. Something about the locket, the letters, the stories, they all converged into a truth that defied imagination. She adjusted the folds of her gown, brushing the petals of her bouquet, and for a moment she looked ordinary, serene, beautiful. But his mind, now racing, recognized the impossible pattern forming between them. She was his half-sister. The room seemed smaller, the heavy drapes pressing against the walls, shadows lengthening, the soft light catching every detail in harsh clarity. His heart pounded as he realized the depth of the revelation, the forbidden reality they now faced together. Tension escalates. He struggled to find words. There's something you need to know," he whispered. His voice trembled, a mixture of fear, disbelief, and sorrow. "What is it?" she asked, her own voice betraying a trace of worry. He swallowed hard, every heartbeat echoing in the silent room. "Our families, I don't know how to say this, but you're my half-sister." The silence that followed was absolute. Dust floated in the light beams, like frozen moments in time. Her eyes widened, recognition dawning slowly, horror creeping across her face. The words were devastating, irreparable, crushing the joy and expectation that had filled the night moments before. She stepped back, trembling. I didn't know. Neither did I," he whispered, though even as he spoke, he knew the words were meaningless. Nothing could undo the revelation. Nothing could erase the forbidden truth now unveiled. Cinematic conflict and emotional depth. The room was suffocating, every shadow exaggerated, every detail amplified. The antique furniture, the heavy drapes, the portraits lining the walls, all seemed to lean closer, as if the estate itself were absorbing the weight of the moment. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, its glow flickering across their shocked faces, highlighting the horror in their expressions. He looked at her, searching for understanding, for forgiveness, for the warmth he had known, but found only disbelief, mirrored back. The love they had shared, so pure, so sincere, now tangled in the impossible web of bloodlines and hidden histories. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and earth, a cruel reminder of the world moving on, unaware of the devastation inside. Inside, time seemed suspended, each second stretched, every heartbeat loud in the thick, charged air. She moved closer hesitantly, fingers trembling as she brushed against his arm. He flinched, but did not pull away, sensing the fragile thread of connection that remained. tenuous but unbroken. What do we do now? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know, he admitted, every word heavy with sorrow. I can't imagine how we go on. The room seemed to shrink further, shadows deepening, the atmosphere thick with the weight of history and forbidden knowledge. Each artifact, each painting, each detail of the room seemed to bear silent witness to the unraveling of their lives. Forbidden love, revealed. Memories of the plantation, of its sprawling fields, of generations of laborers, whispered secrets, and unspoken alliances. Rest down on him. The estate itself seemed to hum with the resonance of past choices and hidden sins. This night, like those before it, would become part of its history. A moment where innocence collided with the forbidden, where love was tested against the immovable walls of lineage and taboo. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly, trembling. He remained standing, gazing out at the endless rows of cotton, bathed in the golden glow of dusk, his mind racing through possibilities, impossibilities, and everything in between. How could this be? She murmured, her voice breaking. I don't know, he said. It was hidden, kept secret for generations. We had no way to know. The truth was absolute. It could not be erased. Love, trust, hope, all were now complicated, shadowed, tainted by the revelation. Yet, amidst the grief, a strange clarity emerged. They knew the reality, however impossible, and that knowledge would shape their path forward. Emotional climax and reflection. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The room was quiet, filled with unspoken words, fleeting glances, and the weight of impossible understanding. Every heartbeat was amplified, every movement charged with significance. They could not escape what had been revealed, but they could face it, together or apart, with honesty and courage. He thought of the plantation's history, the laborers, the families, the secrets that had festered for decades. It had all led to this moment, a collision of past and present, of desire and taboo, of love and blood. The estate remained silent, yet heavy with the echoes of history. Every brick and beam, a reminder of the past's inescapable grip. The dawn approached slowly, pale light filtering through the heavy drapes. The shadows retreated, revealing their faces etched with grief, shock, and lingering traces of affection. Their bond remained, complicated, strained, yet alive, tethered by shared experience and knowledge they could not unlearn. Outside, the world carried on. Birds sang in the trees, wind whispered through leaves, sunlight glinted off the distant fields. Inside, two young souls navigated the impossible, bound by history, love, and the forbidden revelation that had shattered expectation. Air of secrets. The old plantation stood silently under the pale morning sun, its towering columns and sprawling fields glowing faintly with a golden hue. The estate had seen centuries pass, family triumphs, whispered scandals, untold tragedies, and secrets hidden in the shadows of its grand halls. Among the living, a young man of 22 was about to inherit not only wealth but a truth long buried, a truth that would shatter every expectation he had held about love, family, and destiny. He had grown up hearing fragmented stories of his ancestors, stories whispered in the corners of the house, glimpsed in the faded pages of journals, half-forgotten photographs tucked away in dusty boxes. The plantation itself seemed alive with history, the walls thick with the weight of untold stories. Tonight, as he prepared for his wedding, he had no idea that the very foundation of his life was about to be tested. She entered the room quietly, dressed in flowing white lace. Her bouquet, composed of soft jasmine and pale roses, was carried with grace. Her eyes, calm and confident, betrayed a subtle unease, a flicker that went unnoticed by most, but was impossible for him to ignore. "Are you ready?" he whispered, voice low, trembling slightly with anticipation. "Yes," she replied softly, almost hesitantly, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The air in the room was thick, almost tangible, as if holding its breath for the revelation about to unfold. Historical clues and hidden patterns. As they walked into the bridal suite, the room bathed in soft candlelight. He noticed the artifacts surrounding them. An old portrait caught his eye. Two women who looked almost identical, frozen in time, their expressions solemn, holding secrets too heavy for their painted smiles. On the dresser lay a locket, delicate and intricately engraved, glinting faintly. When he picked it up, recognition struck like lightning. The engraving mirrored one he had seen months ago among old family letters hidden in the attic. Every detail now seemed charged with significance. The books lining the shelves, the antique furniture, Even the floorboard seemed to hum with stories of the past. Pieces of the puzzle began to assemble in his mind. Whispered conversation, it's he had overheard as a child, glimpses of old photographs, letters exchanged in secrecy. They all converged toward one impossible truth. One that would change the course of his life. Her eyes followed him, narrowing slightly, sensing the tension in his movements. "Do you remember the family diary?" she asked softly, a hint of curiosity in her tone. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "The locket, the letters, the portraits. It all pointed toward a reality too shocking to ignore. The woman he had pledged to marry, the bride he had loved and dreamed about, was part of the same hidden lineage he had only just begun to understand. The build-up of suspense. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine as comprehension dawned. His heart pounded, each beat echoing in the heavy silence of the room. The revelation was staggering, unthinkable, yet undeniable. She was his half-sister, connected by a hidden lineage carefully concealed over generations. She noticed the change in his demeanor, a subtle tension that went beyond normal pre-wedding nerves. "You look unsettled," she whispered, reaching for his hand. He flinched slightly, but did not withdraw. "There's something you need to know," he said finally, voice trembling. "Something about our families." Her eyes widened, a shadow of fear crossing her face. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath, struggling to form the words. I don't know how to say this, but you're my half-sister." The silence that followed was absolute. The air in the room seemed to thicken, each particle suspended in time. Her eyes widened in disbelief, recognition dawning slowly, horror creeping across her features. Words failed to capture the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Cinematic revelation. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, shadows flickering across their faces, exaggerating the tension and gravity of the moment. The antique furniture seemed lean in, silent witnesses to a forbidden truth. Dust particles floated lazily, illuminated in shafts of golden light, each mote suspended like a frozen heartbeat. His mind raced through generations of family history. The plantation, the laborers, the hidden romances, the whispered secrets, every decision, every hidden romance, every lie preserved to maintain status and power had led to this moment. Two young lives colliding with history, bloodlines, and the impossible. She sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, hands clasped. He remained standing, gazing at the endless cotton fields visible through the window. Bathed in fading light, the magnitude of the revelation pressing down on him. How is this possible?" she asked, voice breaking. "I don't know," he said. "It was hidden. For generations. We had no way to know. It's impossible." Even as they spoke, the truth remained undeniable. Nothing could erase it. Love, expectation, trust, all were irreversibly altered. Emotional intensity and reflection hours passed in silence, punctuated by occasional whispers, deep breaths, and the soft crackling of the fireplace. Each movement, each glance, each heartbeat carried the weight of centuries. Words could not undo the revelation.